All right, good evening, everybody. It is Friday, June 2nd, 2023. The calendar is flipped. The winter sports are coming to an end. But you know what? There's still things to talk about. So we might as well get into it on this Friday night edition of Sports Talk Live. Got a lot of things going on. And we might as well just dive into it. First one, NBA Finals started last night. The Denver Nuggets win Game 1, 104-93. Nikola Jokic had triple-double. Jamal Murray scored 26 points. And the Heat, never looked in the game. I mentioned on Wednesday's show, the rest versus rust debate. It looked like the rest was a great help to the Nuggets. And with the Heat coming off of, winning a Game 7 and going through a 7-game series and then starting, 3-4 days later, you could tell that they're starting to get to that point where it's going to be fatigue for them. They're also playing at altitude. It's in Denver, so that's always something to deal with. And when you're dealing with that, on such a short time window, I'd say, could get difficult. So I was surprised that they never looked really in the game. I thought they'd put up a somewhat better performance. 104-93, that's an 11-point loss. It's not like it was a 30-point loss, but I still expected more from the Heat. I expected this game to be somewhat closer, and it wasn't. But that's what Game 2 is. 3s, 4s, 5s are for. You can have one off day. Once you get to 2 or 3 off days, then it's a problem. The debate is the series doesn't start until the home team loses at home or a road team wins on the road. Obviously, we are only in Game 1, so we are still a long ways away from crown the champion, even though the Denver Nuggets are technically one game closer to winning their first NBA title in their history. We'll see what it looks like on Sunday. The Heat are going to have to come out. They're going to have to look better than they did. Like I said, they look to be in the game. They never were really in the game, though. I don't know how that particularly works, but they never looked like they had that killer instinct that they've had in other series and other games to win those games, basically, with that killer instinct. And it just didn't look like they had that. Like I said, this could be multitude of reasons. It could be because they're coming off a Game 7 and the Nuggets were coming off a 1.5-2 week break, basically. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out come Sunday. I feel like we are going to get to a point, if the Nuggets put on another performance like this on Sunday, then it's the Heat are going to have to probably win both at home for it to be a series. And if not, I see the Heat maybe winning one game at home, and then we head to Denver for Game 5, and that's where it ends. That's only if the performances that were shown yesterday show up again. We know in basketball that doesn't happen, so we could see a completely different Heat team. We could see a completely different Nuggets team come Sunday. So it's going to be, like I said, these are the two best teams in the NBA, I believe. I said on Wednesday, seeding doesn't matter. Even though the Heat are an 8 seed, seeding does not matter. You have the two best players, I'd say, in the league right now, Nikola Jokic and Jimmy Butler, going head-to-head. This series is far from over, even though it could take a turn come Sunday if results go a certain way. Some news came out on both Wednesday and Thursday in the NBA, so kind of some news and notes. First one, Monty Williams will be hired by the Detroit Pistons. It was a 6-year, $8 million contract, the biggest one in NBA history. It's an interesting hire. I got to say that. I really thought Kevin Ollie was going to be the guy for the job. It didn't turn out to be that way. It seemed like it was going to go that way. I did not see Monty taking the job. He's obviously taking the job because he got this absolutely ginormous bag of money, which also shocked me. The Pistons don't do that. So for them to put that kind of money down on a coach means they want to win now. They're not going to. They're still going to suck next year. I don't see Monty Williams fixing this. And I don't know if Monty Williams is an outstanding coach. I don't know if he's the guy to take this Pistons team to what the money they are paying him to do. He kind of gives off a Juwan Howard vibe, being that he's like a player's coach, but he can't coach those players, and he significantly underachieves and then can't win the big games. That's kind of what Monty Williams feels like, and I feel like come November, December, Pistons fans are going to start noticing that, and it's not going to be fun. Now, I could be completely wrong on this. It could be just, bias that I think that Kevin Ollie probably would have been a better hire. Especially Kevin Ollie would not have gotten a ginormous bag of money. You could have at least kept it sensible with Kevin Ollie. The way it worked out, if you take Monty Williams' annual average value, so his AAV, so that's whatever it was, his total payout, which was like $78 million for the 6 years, and the AAV would usually be your salary cap hit. It was like around $12.2 million, so he's getting paid like $12.2 million a year, somewhere in the $12 million range. That would be the second or third highest paid player in the NHL. That is just absolutely insane. Now, does that say more about the NHL? Probably, because the NHL, the salary cap is still absolutely in the gutter right now. Players don't get paid the way NBA players do, so it's a bad comparison. But just putting that like in your head, it's just a weird way to think about things, that you're paying a coach $12-ish million a year. It's not gonna be good year one, because the Pistons are still going to be absolutely awful. Year two is when you're going to be hoping to turn around. I don't know if it happens. It may not. And then 3, 4, 5, 6, potential 7th, I think. Really anything can happen. The other coaching news, Frank Vogel was hired by the Suns. That's a 5-year deal. I don't remember the numbers on it. It's not Monty Williams money. This is another interesting hire by the Suns. I didn't really think Frank Vogel was in the running for this job. So when I saw it come across, I'm like, Because honestly, like, when I think Frank Vogel, I still think he's with the Lakers for some reason, even though I know it's Darvin Ham. Just in my mind, it's Frank Vogel. He's either with the Lakers or he's with the Pacers. I won't be able to comprehend that he's the Suns coach come, October next year. Should be interesting. They have the talent to do something there. I don't think Frank Vogel's the guy to get you there. Who is the guy to get you there? I have no idea either. Frank Vogel won a Mickey Mouse title with the Lakers at Disney World. So technically it was Mickey Mouse because it was in Disney. But other than that, obviously you can't put all the blame on him. He had the oldest average team in the NBA for 2 to 3 years straight. You can't put that all on him. But outside of the bubble year, the Lakers never really had an outstanding season with him as head coach. So it's going to be interesting to see him go to the Suns, where there's going to be major expectations on him, and just see what he can do, basically. I don't think he's the guy. Doc Rivers wouldn't be, because he always chokes in the playoffs. Nick Nurse was already hired by 76ers, and I had my own arguments against him for that job. I can't even think of another big name out there right now. I don't think there is an NBA coach that right now that could be that next leader for the Suns, I'd say. So really interesting decisions in the NBA these past 2 days. The Monty Williams contract still absolutely baffles me. It's just, I don't get it. I get it, but I don't. It's just, that is so much money for a coach that he did get to the Suns to an NBA Finals, but outside of that, they were significant underachievers. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So we move to the ice. Stanley Cup Final starts tomorrow in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena. It is the Vegas Golden Knights, the Florida Panthers. It's been the Stars, or not the Stars, the Golden Knights beat the Stars, I think, on Sunday. So both teams are kind of just in limbo right now. I mean, the Panthers finished almost 2 weeks ago also, just like the Nuggets did. So this is going to be another case. Rest versus rust. I feel like the Panthers, more than the Nuggets, are set for the rust, because that Panthers team was just so hot. They sweep the Hurricanes, and now they've been sitting. I feel like that's going to be a problem for them, and I think it's going to show. I think game one, you really see it set in, and I don't know if there will be any coming back from it for them, because they, like I've said, they've been hot. They beat the Bruins in 7. 2 days later, they play Toronto. They win that in 5. So they do have a little bit of a break between Toronto and Carolina. They sweep Carolina, obviously, and now they've had a 10-11 day break. I'm going to be very interested to see how this Panthers team look come tomorrow night. This Golden Knights team they look very good. Aiden Hill, the goaltender for the Golden Knights, he came in I believe it was the second round against the Oilers in Game 5 for an injury, and he just hasn't looked back. He's looked like an outstanding goaltender the games that he's played in. So this is going to be the battle of goaltenders. If Bobrovsky looks like the player he did in the other rounds, because if it looks like a Bobrovsky that's been sitting for 10 days, it's not going to look good, because then that really is rust setting in. I think the rest versus rust debate is more prevalent in the NHL, just given that you're on skates. You're going, I think it's miles per game. It's just rest. Yes, the rest would have been very nice for the Panthers if this series started Wednesday, I'd say. They would have had a week and a few days off. I believe it would have been a week and a day. So 8 days off. I think that's better than 12, 13, 12, 11. It just, at some point, a break has to become too long, basically. And I feel like the Panthers are getting to that point. You can practice as much as you want, but at some point, practice isn't going to do enough. And with the Golden Knights too, it's not as long of a break, but they basically had this whole week off coming up to this game. I know the NHL was going to start it on Wednesday if the Golden Knights won in 5, and then it went to 6, and we had to move it to Saturday. I don't know, but that's the NHL for you. So we start tomorrow. I believe Gary Bettman's state or like commissioner's address or whatever his media press conference is called is tomorrow. There's gonna be a lot of questions on Arizona, and I don't know if he's gonna want to answer them, but they're gonna be asked. And I mean, I saw something on Twitter earlier that's saying that the Panthers didn't win a playoff game, or I think even make the playoffs from 1996 to 2014, I believe. And then from 14 to 16, I say they didn't win a playoff game. So it was literally like 20 years in between playoff wins for the Panthers. And now they look like what they are right now. They look successful. It's the biggest case for keeping Arizona in Arizona, because this team from 2010, 2011 to I'd say 2018, we're always it's time to move the Panthers. And they were in that group with Arizona and Atlanta. And at some points it was Carolina. It was 4 teams. It was the 3 Southeastern teams and Arizona. It was always like, it's time to pull the plug, move these teams out, put them wherever you want. It's time to end it here. The Panthers doing well this playoffs is the biggest case for keeping Arizona in Arizona, because it can show that fan bases can grow if there's a winning team there, and you can get people to fall in love with the sport basically and just become huge fans of it. I completely agree with that. That is a great case. It's just, I've also said that the Coyotes team is, I feel like they've lost the fan base now, even if they start winning. I could be completely wrong, because once people start winning, people show up, but they've tried so many times, and I think it's gone a step too far, and it's just time to go. But you know what? This isn't about the Coyotes right now. This is about the Stanley Cup. Just mentioning that Gary Bettman's press conference is tomorrow. He'll get questions on Arizona. Probably something to talk about on Monday. The Golden Knights, I mentioned, I think they look unbeatable right now, especially against this Florida Panthers team that could be just full of rust. They have looked good all playoffs. I mean, I guess you could say in the Edmonton series they didn't look great because they were giving up goals, but goaltending didn't matter in that series because both of them were terrible, and you have just absolutely amazing scorers on both teams. The Dallas series, I think, showed that they are a cup-winning team. It's just that they've hit that extra level now that I believe that they can get it done. I think the matchup sets up well too. If it was Carolina, I'd probably lean a little bit more Carolina than Vegas. But I think Vegas against Florida, I think that's just, it kind of seems like it's going to be Vegas's to lose. And obviously, things can happen. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. This is going to be the first NHL or Stanley Cup final on cable TV exclusively for the NHL since 1994. So that's going to be interesting. They got the better team. They got the TNT crew miles ahead of ESPN because it seems like TNT actually cares about the sport. So there's going to be an entertaining product for at least 4 games, pre and post game, intermission, all that. It's going to be at least 4 games of good hockey content. Of course, as I've said before, I am not a watcher of the U.S. Hockey networks because of the location with the Detroit area being close to Windsor. You get the CBC, and the Sportsnet/CBC broadcast is just always better, even from what TNT does, because they actually live and breathe that. So that is the broadcast I will be watching, but I'm sure I will be seeing clips of this TNT crew, which I'm sure they're going to be in Vegas. I would assume. I could be wrong. I know for the Eastern Conference Finals, they sent the NBA crew to Miami and Boston. Obviously, it's easier to do pre- and post-game type stuff on basketball because you can just go set up on the court. You can't set up on the ice if you're doing pre- and post-game and stuff like that. So I don't know if they're sending the crews to the Cup final. I like I said, I assume they would, but they easily could not. Overall prediction for this series, I've really struggled with this because I want the Panthers to win because I think that would just be a great story. A team, because of this team that I'm wearing, they got into the playoffs and they've just taken that by storm. And it gives the transitive trophy to the Penguins because we basically got the Panthers in the playoffs. So you're welcome, Florida. I just, like I said, I think this is Vegas's to lose. They just look so much better than the Panthers do right now. They just, like I said, they look like they have it figured out, and it is going to be a long series for Florida. And of course, since I've all said this, it's just going to be like the Nuggets. The Panthers are going to come out. They're not going to dominate, but they're going to dominate in their own way and win like 2-1, and all of this will be pointless. So that's what you should expect. Other news that came out yesterday, the reason why I am wearing this, it's a topic that has been discussed on this show before. Kyle Dubas has been hired by the Pittsburgh Penguins, but it's not for the GM job. As he said in his end-of-season press conference with the Leafs that he probably shouldn't have done. He will either be the GM in Toronto or nowhere at all next year. He's technically not the GM. So he is going to be the president of hockey operations, so that is above the GM. You get a little bit more to work with, basically. Like, you will be hiring the GM. You're not going to be the second person that's fired if things go wrong, because then it will go coach, general manager. Then gives you a little bit more job safety. I think, like I've said, I wanted Kyle Dubas even when he was still with the Leafs and his contract was expiring. I figured, we should just throw out a line and say, hey, bag of money here. Consider it. Probably stay in Toronto, but here, consider it at least. And I would have been completely fine with that. And then the Penguins could have went off and hired, the next Kyle Dubas. But then just the downward spiral of the Maple Leafs, the end of season press conference that probably shouldn't have been done or probably shouldn't have been too honest. Then the releasing / firing, whatever you want to call it. And then basically he took 2 weeks and now he is the president of hockey ops for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Another thing mentioned was he's going to technically be the interim GM. He's just doing GM jobs up until after the draft, it sounded like. That's when the search for a general manager would start. I'm assuming that more meant they plan on hiring a general manager after the draft, but, he will be interiming in that time, but they will still be searching for a coach or a GM. So I think that's what's going to happen. It's, like I said, I love this hire. I think this is going to be great for the Penguins. He mentioned in his press conference yesterday that he was like, people are already doubting the Penguins, that it's already past their prime for Letang, Malkin, and Crosby to win another cup. And he said, like, just keep betting on us. As a Penguins fan, I'd love to hear that. But also, I know the window is closed on the Penguins winning a cup. It's going to take a miracle and a half to get us there. It's not going to happen, I don't think. We can hope all we want, but I mean, it would be sweet justice for Kyle Dubas if he won a cup in Pittsburgh, especially if it was like next year. That would be just, so poetic, but I think it's past the point of no return for the core. It's just age gets to you. And yes, they put up good performances this year, but they were just let down by the team around them. They got a lot of contracts they'd have to move to even potentially become good. And the goaltending situation is something. I don't know what we're going to do this offseason. But yeah, so that's been what's going on in hockey. So we'll do a little bit of a preview. We talked about Indycar last week, so we're going to talk about it again this week. The Detroit Grand Prix is this weekend on the streets of Detroit for the first time since the early 90s. I put this in the background, a nice old poster from 1985. It's got like a car running past the Renaissance Center in Detroit. Figured put that in the background since that they are returning to that this year. So I was actually there this afternoon and this morning. I got to watch practice, and here's a quick clip from that.
And then again, you come off between turn 2 and 3. It's a very long straightaway, so a chance to get it and build up some pretty good speed. But you've got to be very, very careful. There are very few cars in this racetrack that are not very sharp on this kind of returns.
I just realized my mic was muted there. But basically what I was saying, pit road, they split into two sides. One side you're going to have half the cars, the other side you're going to have half. They're going to merge, and then you're going to veer out into turn one. That is going to be very interesting to watch come Sunday, especially if it's during green flag stops, that it gets very iffy if that happens. You're going to have some major problems. I was mentioning that all the series today, IMSA, Trans Am, Indy Next, and Indycar, they were all having trouble in turn one, and it was mostly coming out of pit road. So it's good. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out come Sunday. I also mentioned that there are very narrow parts of the track. The video you saw was from turn 3, the hairpin. That may be one of 2 or 3 passing zones available on this track. I feel like it's just going to be a train car line of cars basically for this race. I don't think there's going to be a lot of passing. Speeds are very good though. They are going fast on these streets, and it is very bumpy. They did some work to the roads, but they are still Michigan roads at its finest without the potholes, so it's very bumpy. You could really see the heads of the drivers bouncing up and down, the cars bouncing up and down. Some of them going into the turn 3 hairpin, they were on 3 wheels, because you could see the left front wheel just kind of go up a little and it just stopped moving. So it's going to be interesting to see the track and race conditions. So I don't really know if there's a huge favorite this weekend, given that they've never run on this track before. Obviously they got the hour and a half practice today, but I don't think there's a major favorite for this race. All the cars look fast today. It's just going to be how you set up and avoiding the mistakes like crashing coming out of pit lane. That's going to be key for Sunday. And then finally, as we do every show, quick kick around the pitch. One major match this weekend. It's tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. ESPN Plus. It is the FA Cup final. It is Manchester City versus Manchester United. It is the first Manchester derby as a FA Cup final in the history of the FA Cup final, which is 152 years old now. It's going to be a very interesting match. This is the second step to the treble for Manchester City, and they are going up against the only team in England that has done the treble, which is Manchester United, so their biggest rivals. They did it in 99. They won the Premier League. I almost want to say they didn't win the FA Cup. They won the Worthington Cup, it was called at the time. Now it's the Carabao. And they won the Champions League. I don't remember specifically if they won the FA Cup that year. I don't think they did. I could be completely wrong. I am doing the research right now because that is what I do. I was wrong. It was Manchester United that won that year. So what can I say? So basically, Man City are going for the same treble that United did in 99. Like I said, this is step 2 of the 3-step process. Step 3 will be next weekend if they get through this weekend with the Champions League final in Istanbul. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. I don't think it will be complete domination by Manchester City. I do think United are going to throw a few wrinkles at them and just try to get them off their normal, momentum. So I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. That's really the only game I feel is major this weekend, I'd say. It's the only game in England. I know that for a fact. So I think that's going to be it for tonight. There's not really much else to talk about. There are 2 other sporting events or sports races this weekend, I should say. NASCAR is in technically St. Louis, even though it's in Illinois. They are at Gateway. Formula 1 is in Spain, Barcelona. Max Verstappen obviously going to be a heavy favorite there. I would say don't count out Fernando Alonso on home soil, but just Verstappen's too fast. In all honesty, that's all it is. Verstappen's too fast. So those are the two other racing series that are this weekend. And like I said, I'm just going to wrap it up here because there's not much else. We'll be back on Monday, NBA Finals, recapping Game 2, Stanley Cup Finals, I believe, will be on during this. There's going to be a few more soccer matches to preview come Monday. I'm sure there's going to be news that breaks this weekend for something. So just thank you for watching. We will see you again on Monday, and